Join the conversation.
Join the conversation.
You're with Cape Talk.
My name is Saskia Falk and I'm in for Clarence Ford today on Views and News. We turn our attention now to the naked scientist, Dr. Chris Smith, no doubt a highlight for me. I'm a curious person and he's just got such a wealth of knowledge. Good morning, Chris.
Oh, hi, Saskia. Do you know, look, I'm turning up to class, and it's very nice to see, by the way, having done my homework. So I'm going to get that out the way right now, because then we can all relax. Yes, I've done my homework. Last week's homework, I think it might have been Barbara who called in, and I said, I don't know for sure what the answer to this question is, but I think there's a paper in the journal Joule from a few years ago that will answer your question. I'm going to go and find it. Well, I'm pleased to say I have gone and found that paper. It was in the journal Joule, and her question was, do wind turbines affect the temperature of the ground? Because there's not sort of information going around that if you extract energy with wind turbines, can it make the world warmer? And people said, no, that sounds preposterous. Why would a wind turbine that's taking energy out of the wind make things warmer? Well, actually, it can. And this paper in Joule from 2019 models how wind turbines take energy out of the air, slow the air down, and in the process, therefore, drag warmer air from the upper boundary layer and bring it closer to the Earth for various reasons. And this increases ground temperatures by up to 0.24 degrees C. So if we were generating huge amounts of energy with wind turbines, we would see a small but significant warming effect because of wind turbines, because of redistribution of heat within the atmosphere. It's not making new heat, it's moving heat from one place where it currently isn't to somewhere else where it's moving it from where it is to where it currently isn't.
Fascinating. And that's science. All these unintended consequences. This is why we love having access to you. Thank you so much for that. I think we've got a caller on the line. Let's go straight to the line. Good morning.
Hi, it's Brian here. Is that Saskia?
Yes, good morning, Brian. What's your question for Chris?
Hi, Chris. Coincidentally, my question is also something to do with heat. I've always learned that black surfaces or dark surfaces, they retain heat, and light surfaces reflect the light. We have to have our garage rooms painted, and they wanted to paint, the contractor recommended black. And I said, won't that heat mean that the garages will heat up terribly inside? And he said, no, that the new roof paints actually don't absorb the heat. Can this be true, and how would that work?
Morning, Brian. Well, first of all, let's think about the physics of this. Why would a surface which is a black surface behave differently from a surface that's, say, white or silver, reflective? And the answer is that light is energy. And when we bring light to the Earth from the sun, energy is being transferred from the sun to the Earth. So if you transfer energy from somewhere that's got a lot to somewhere that's got less, the energy in the thing that's got less must go up. If you have a black roof, it's looking black because it is reflecting less light from its surface to you. If it's reflecting less light than an equivalent white surface, there must be more energy going into the roof than a white roof, because the white roof has sent more energy back out into space. If the energy's gone up of the roof, its temperature must have gone up. So a dark surface does absorb more light energy, otherwise it wouldn't look dark. If it's absorbing more energy, its temperature must be rising. And so therefore you make surfaces you want to absorb energy, like solar panels, dark. You make surfaces you want to radiate energy away, like a cricket outfit, white. Now, whether or not your builder happens to have access to a paint that has a very poor thermal conductivity, so it can absorb loads of energy, but then it doesn't transfer that energy through to the surfaces below, or they've got some other crafty thing in the way as a boundary, maybe that's what they've done. But if you have a dark surface, it will absorb more energy, otherwise it wouldn't look dark. Therefore, it will be at a higher temperature once you've shone light on it.
Thank you so much. We've got another question in here. Good morning. I had cataract surgery in May this year. I went for a routine checkup yesterday and told I have a protein buildup behind the eyes that required laser treatment. What is protein buildup, and is it worth worrying about? Thank you, Jenny.
Jenny, morning. What you're describing is what we call capsule formation. And this is really common, so it's nothing to worry about. And ophthalmologists who deal with this deal with it a lot, and they're really good at sorting it out, and they're not at all fazed by it. When we do a cataract operation, what we're doing is going into a lens sac in the front of the eye. So behind the cornea, the front part of your eye that you would put your contact lens on, is a sac or a pouch which has a lens in it. And that lens can stretch or shrink, expand or contract, thicken or thin itself out in order to do a bit of focusing. It does about 15% of the focusing job of the light coming into your eye. Over time, and with age, ultraviolet exposure, certain drugs like steroids, certain diseases, you end up with a fogging of that lens, because the lens proteins, the things that make up the lens, the ones you're born with are the ones you die with. They're not replaced through life. So as they get damaged and clapped out by the wear and tear of life, they slowly degrade. And this has the effect of scattering the light that goes in through the eye, blurring vision, and also making night vision more tricky, and also tending to shift your ability to see some colours better than others. So you tend to get more scattering of the blue light and more reds come through. So it changes subtly the way that we view the colours of the world around us. And this was illustrated by Monet, I think it was Monet, who had cataracts. And once his eyes were sorted out and the cataracts were dealt with, he changed his painting style and moved to a very different colour palette, because he was seeing the world through different coloured eyes, effectively.
Literally.
Because the lens was no longer there to scatter the blue out. And so he got a much more balanced view of the world. A few politicians would benefit from that, wouldn't they? But when we take the lens out, they degrade the lens, the old lens that's in there. It's called phacoemulsion. You use an ultrasound probe to go in and blast the lens to pieces. And you then replace it with a prosthesis. And this is a carefully selected lens replacement, which is ideal for your particular eye shape and configuration, and can correct any pre-existing eye problem in terms of being short or long-sighted, actually. So some people actually quite like having their cataract sorted out, because you can improve your vision this way, as well as making the cataract problem go away. In a proportion of people who have this done, though, the sac that we put that lens back into develops behind it, probably because of an inflammatory reaction or some kind of irritation caused by the foreign body that's gone in there and the removal of your own lens, a build-up of a reactive material, which is probably the eye's way of cushioning itself against something that it doesn't think should be in there. And this has the effect of recoating or blurring out the lens and can make vision degrade again. Luckily, it's easy to scrape off and reset the system, and then it doesn't come back. So if this has been picked up, the ophthalmologist will go back in there, remove it, and then you should be good to go. It's very simple, and it doesn't have complications 99% of the time.
Super. We're inside of The Naked Scientist talking to Dr. Chris Smith. He's answering your questions. Let's go to that voice note now from Ruth.
Morning, Cape Talk and Dr. Chris. I have a question. Everybody's complaining that time is going by so fast. The years are just passing the months and days. Is there a possibility that there's something happening, that time is really moving fast, like the axle or whatever turning, the earth turning over the moon, or the moon turning, or however it is stated? Is there a possibility of that?
What an interesting question.
Well, the answer is, first of all, is the length of a day changing? Because that was implicit within that question as well. Is the Earth turning differently? The answer is, yeah, day length is changing. And the days that we have today are longer than the days that the dinosaurs enjoyed, and much, much longer than the days that the planet enjoyed when it was young, about 4.5 billion years ago. It's slowing down. And one of the reasons that Earth is slowing down is because the moon, which was made when another planet about the size of Mars slammed into us when the Earth was first formed, and it ejected loads of material around the Earth, and that coalesced to form the moon. So we have a relatively big moon compared to our planet. Because our planet turns inside the orbit of the moon is extracting energy from the spin of the Earth. It's doing it only very slowly. This has the effect of moving the moon further away from the Earth by a couple of centimetres every year. But because the Earth is losing energy to the moon, the Earth is actually slowing down a bit. And every 100 years or so, I can't remember the exact metric, but basically we lose a matter of milliseconds every century, a couple of milliseconds a century, something like that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But this all adds up. And so over millions of years, you end up with a day that is actually a bit shorter compared to the day that the dinosaurs saw. But that is not why you think time is flying by, because for all of us, time does appear to accelerate as we get older. And it's a really well documented
so.
phenomenon. And there are a number of theories to account for this. The commonest and probably most plausible is that when we were little, if you think about how long a day is, when you're only a year old, a day is a massive proportion of your life. When you are 80 years old, a day is a tiny, tiny proportion of your life, and the brain is sensitive to the proportion of time as a proportion of the whole, and so it assumes that something must have taken less time because it was only a tiny proportion of all the time you've seen. So that's one idea. The other is that we also gauge time by novelty. When we experience something novel or interesting, we tend to lay down a richer sequence of memories about novel, new things than we do about things we've seen a million times before. And the brain seems to be sensitive to how rich the memory pattern is for a period of time. And so it can look at the number of memories you laid down in a day and say, oh, look, I made a lot more memories in that period of time, so that must have taken ages to make all those memories. So that's a long period of time. Whereas because as you get older, you've seen it all before, literally as well as metaphorically, you make fewer new memories, so the brain says, well, that mustn't have taken so long, so your perception of time correspondingly shrinks.
Dr. Chris, I've got in one here from Solly in Weinberg. Solly says, hi, Dr. Chris. I know we shrink as we get older. Can we predict by how much? Right now, I'm 1.85 meters, aged 44. What will my height be at age 60? Also, why do our ears and noses get bigger as we get older? I think Solly is just 15 years in the future, imagining what he's going to look like.
Hi, Solly.
Do we have an answer for that?
Impossible to say how much you'll shrink by, but you're right, everyone gets a bit shorter. And the reason we all get shorter, there's a range of tissues that shrink with age. I'm afraid everything doesn't improve with age. That is a myth. There are some things that definitely don't. We do get wiser, we do get wrinklier, we do get bigger eyes, ears and noses, but we do get shorter. The biggest contributor to the shrinkage is your backbone, because between each of the bones down your spine are intervertebral discs. These are squidgy, fibrous discs, which are there like shock absorbers between each of the bones. And the idea is if you jump up and down, as the force comes up your legs, it squidges transiently each of these discs, and these absorb the impact, becoming a bit shorter and then expanding again as they do it. But just as rubber gets a bit more rigid and inflexible as it ages, these discs do the same thing, and they become drier, shrunken and thinner. And if each one becomes thinner, because you've got a lot of bones in your neck, you've got 6 bones in your cervical spine, you've got 12 in your thoracic spine, 5 in the lumbar, you've had all that lot up. That's a lot of discs. So that's a lot of shrinkage, and this will take a lot of height away. And then you've got cartilage in your joints that also tends to shrink, and so that means the bone ends are a bit closer together. So when you add all of that up over the course of a body, you do shrink as you get a bit older. Now, in terms of ears and noses growing, this is a common phenomenon, and this is because the tissue, they are modelled on cartilage. So there is underneath your nose and inside your ears fibrous cartilage, which gives them their shape and rigidity and structure, and it's covered in soft tissue and skin. And that cartilage is very slowly turning over. There are populations of cells in there called chondrocytes, which lay down fresh cartilage and they eat away and get rid of the old clapped out cartilage. But as they do so, over a life course, they do tend to make a bit more cartilage than you started with. So some of these tissues, which are cartilage-based, do get bigger as we get older. And the ears are the obvious prominent one, and the nose. Partly because they're bits of the body we notice a lot and we see a lot,
Right.
but they are also probably a bit more disproportionately affected in this way as well. So everyone has this to look forward to, but it tends to be more common in men than women,
Thank you.
possibly because of male hormones as well.
Thank you. I was just going to ask for clarity on that. We do have another caller on the line. Let's go to the line. Good morning. What is your question for Dr. Chris?
Good morning, Dr. Chris. I wondered for many years, having used a microwave, does it affect the nutritional value of food?
Who's calling?
My name's Ian.
Hello,
Ian.
Ian. Nice to have you on the programme. Thanks for your call. The answer is that a microwave works by producing microwaves, which are a form of electromagnetic radiation similar to light, from a structure called a magnetron. And this was discovered in the Second World War or thereabouts, that you could make radio and microwaves in this way. But these come out of the side of the microwave, go across inside the cavity of the microwave, bounce off the far side, and then map back onto themselves. And they produce a pattern of hot and cold spots with a wavelength of about 12 centimetres. So the distance from one wave to the next is about 12 centimetres. And the energy is jiggling up and down. And the frequency of a microwave made in this way is about 1.5 gigahertz. Now that's chosen carefully because it doesn't have enough energy to rip apart the bonds in material. It can't break chemical bonds. It's not powerful enough. But it does happen to make water molecules shake about very hard. So the way a microwave oven heats something is it shakes the water molecules that are in the substance really hard, a bit like you rubbing your hands backwards and forwards over each other really fast, 1.45 billion times a second, in fact. And that vibration of the water molecules increases the temperature. So it puts energy into certain points in the food, and the heat then spreads out and is shared among all the particles in the food. That's basically how it works. Now, because the energy isn't sufficient to rip molecules apart, nevertheless, you can superheat some bits of the food and underheat other bits of the food. And this is why you have to be really careful if you put a glass of water in the microwave oven, for example, because you can get superheating of some patches of the liquid. Soup can do the same thing, and then relative cold spots next door. And then when you disturb the body of water, or the soup or whatever, stir it up, it can actually explode outwards because the superheated bit suddenly releases a lot of energy which was all held in one place, and it can spray on you and burn you. So you've got to be really careful with that. So in other words, the microwave oven will cook food, and it can cook some bits of the food to a really, really, really high temperature, capable of actually causing the degradation through thermal effects of some of the nutrients. So if you cooked anything to death, it would destroy the nutritional value. But a microwave oven should give good quality heating, although you have to be careful it doesn't cause too much heating in one place, which is why we use a turntable. So in theory, microwaving your vegetables should not cause more degradation, in fact should cause less loss of nutrients than chucking them in a pan of boiling water, which would leach all the nutrients out.
Provided that turntable is working out. I'm thinking now all the times my turntable didn't work and I was just like, oh, that's okay. But actually, no, that's actually then quite important from a safety perspective.
Yeah, be careful.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chris, always wonderful talking to you. We have run out of time. I want to thank everybody for their questions. And remember that this happens again next week, same time, same place. You have yourself a top Friday.
And you. Bye, everyone.
Join the conversation.
Join the conversation.
You're with Cape Talk.